Hello, everyone, and welcome to this month's Talent Table, where we are going to be talking about elevating talent with AI, from first steps to the finish line. Got a couple of fantastic presenters with us today, Nico from Coca-Cola EuroPacific Partners and Kathy from the Josh Bersin Company. I'll have them introduce themselves in just a moment. As we'll be talking about ways to identify and nurture the right talent using AI and probably a whole lot of other things. So before we get started, a few things on housekeeping. If you look towards the bottom of your screen, you'll see some widgets that you can use during this event. There's also further related reading in the resources section, so don't forget to check that out. And you can ask us questions using the Q&A function. And if we can't get to your question during the webinar, we may answer it after the session ends in a follow-up message. So that all done, let's go ahead and get started. So first of all, I am Rebecca Warren, your host for this session. I have been at Eightfold for coming up on 4 years now, and I work in the talent transformation team, helping folks understand what transformation looks like, moving from a job-centered approach to more of a skills-centered transformation focusing on people. And now for the most interesting folks of the day, I am going to throw this on over to our guests to introduce themselves. I'll send it to Nico first and then to Kathy. And then after they do that, well, actually, I'll throw out the question now. Okay, so in your introduction, tell us a little bit about who you are and why you're excited to be on this, this chat today. And then for the question of the month that I ask our folks, August is a month of transition, so tell me what you're most looking forward to this fall. All right, I'll send it on over to Nico.
Thank you very much, Rebecca. Is it this type of webinar that I have to start answering all kinds of questions like this? I will do my best. So hi everybody. My name is Nico Hori. I'm a VP People and Culture at Coca-Cola EuroPacific Partners. I'm responsible, among many things, for the operations, including our digital strategy, everything we do around talent marketplace. I'll share a bit more about that later on. I'm also the business partner for Northern Europe, so it's quite an interesting combination. I'm living in the Netherlands, but my team is very much global. Coca-Cola EuroPacific Partners, we are the biggest bottler of Coke in the world, Coca-Cola products in the world. We operate in 33 countries, 42,000 employees, 20 billion euro revenue. Very much looking forward for a dialogue, so I hope for a lot of questions and challenges to come my way. And I would love to share a bit more what we're doing at Coca-Cola EuroPacific Partners in this space. Yes, as you referred to, Rebecca, August is sort of the month you're starting up again, and you realize how much still has to be done in this year, right? So actually, I'm looking forward to just being able this year to tick off some of those big bets that we still have to deliver upon. We have a very exciting leadership program with the London Business School, which is very exciting, which we hopefully can close in the fall of this year. There's also a lot of other topics which I will not bother you with. On a personal front, I'm very much looking forward. I bought a summer house home in Spain, and we will finally be able to finally sign and get the keys for that home. So I'm really looking forward to that. That's a big thing to look forward to. Thank you.
And do you have it set up for visitors yet? Do you have your guest book ready for us
Absolutely.
to sign in?
There's a website with prices and everything included. No, it's obviously everyone is invited, but may take a while. Thank you.
All right. We've just invited ourselves to your house in Spain.
You're
so
more
rude.
than welcome.
All right, Kathy, on over to you. Thanks for that, Nico.
Great. And Nico, we need to talk about Spain because I just came back from our house in Spain a little bit more than a week ago. So we need to talk about Spain.
Few houses to visit in Spain.
Few houses to visit in Spain. Absolutely. Absolutely. So Kathy Enderes, Senior Vice President of Research and Global Industry Analyst at the Josh Bersin Company. I have the privilege and the fun opportunity to learn and talk with many companies, including and inspiring leaders like Nico. I've been connected with Nico for quite some time, and we finally had the opportunity to do a case study together on all the great things Nico and his team are doing at Coca-Cola EuroPacific partner. So if you check this out, I think it's in the resource section, and it's really fantastic. And I'm just excited to share all that we've learned about this topic, working with many different clients and many different companies on using AI for transforming talent. I know it's a hot topic. Everybody wants to talk about AI, and everybody wants to talk about what it means for talent and how we run the people side of things. So I can't wait for this discussion. A little bit about myself. I'm based in Palo Alto, California. I've been with the Josh Bersin company for about 4 years too. So Rebecca, same thing as you have been with Eightfold. And my background is actually, I have a consulting background with the big 4 consulting firms, but then I also worked as a practitioner for about 10 years, leading talent in very large companies. And then for the last few years, I've been an analyst and researcher. So that's my background. August is a transition month. Rebecca, what a great question. Well, I feel it's still summer. I'm really a summer lover, so I don't like that question all that much. People with all their pumpkin spice lattes and all of that can stay away for a little bit longer. I don't think it's fall quite yet. It's still 95 degrees here in California, so it's still nice and sunny. We're still using the pool. But I do look forward to 2 things. One professional and one personal, one for fall. Professionally, I'm really looking forward to the conference season where we get to go to many different places and work and talk with many different companies. So that's kicking off. Actually, I'm starting next week, and then it's a sprint to the finish line to Thanksgiving here. Every week, probably somewhere else. So I'm really looking forward to that. And on the personal side, I'm a big runner, and I love that the weather is going to be a little bit cooler for running. So that's what I'm looking forward to.
Oh, I love that. Yes, speaking of cooler weather, right, that is around the corner for us. I am based in Phoenix, and so we're now hovering right around that 100 mark, maybe going under a little. So that feels amazing, and we're starting our guest season, so folks tend to visit when it's not so hot. So we have some friends coming in from Scotland. They were very clear about when they were timing their visit. We are not coming in before the end of September, so they're going to be here in about a month, and it'll probably still be too hot for them. So we'll see how they go. But I promise I
don't blame them. I don't blame them. I try to avoid Phoenix area in summer. Yeah.
Yes, we get great deals on the resorts, though. So just saying.
Oh, absolutely.
All right. Well, so let's talk a little bit about elevating talent with AI. So if we think about over the last 10 years, and especially accelerated in the last 4, HR is undergoing a significant transition, right? The function has shifted from compliance to service delivery to a strategic partner in business. In many cases, it's now called people operations or people experience. We've gone from selection to recruiting to talent acquisition to talent experience, and talent management now has come out as a completely separate function. And then tying all this together, we have AI and talent intelligence, which we're talking about automating routine tasks, providing data-driven insights, and enabling personalized employee experience. That's a lot going on right now, right? So let's jump in here, and let's start by discussing how talent management has evolved as a function. So I'm going to send this to Kathy first. My question is around how has the employee ask of the people team, HR team, changed in recent years? And in doing so, what opportunities and challenges has that opened up for the people team?
Yeah, what a great question. And I think just starting out with a little bit of history of where talent management has been and where I think it's going. So talent management is really not a new concept, of course, at all. And at this point, I feel it's almost a little bit dated concept that we can manage talent in this way. I think employees, and you hit on this, Rebecca, employees are really much more in the driver's seat now than that we can just manage them like we can manage kind of assets or resources. It used to be that we thought about talent management kind of like in your kind of how you manage your parts or how you manage your kind of products and where you ship them and all of that. But of course, the employee ask and the employee expectations have changed a lot in the last few years. Triggered by the labor shortage. I think every employer is trying to find the right people, trying to find the right skills. And employees really are in the driver's seat now. So employees are really looking for more. We call this concept employee activation, where we're saying employees don't just want to kind of put their head down and do their job, but they want to have a say in everything from how they do their job to how the company makes money, to how they satisfy their customers, to what strategy the company has, to location strategies and everything else. And if employers don't respond to that ask, I think they're going to be left behind. So that's really going on, and we in HR have to respond to that. We really have to address that. And I think what's really going on and what we in HR need to do and in talent need to do, and Nico has some great stories on how they do it, is empower employees so that the power balance has really shifted in how we manage talent, that we really enable employees to drive their own career, understand what their skills are and how they relate to what the organization needs, and really basically set their own path. All of this also is underscored by DEI, by a sense of belonging. We just had a big roundtable discussion on DEI with about 40 HR leaders. And that's another big topic that I think there's lots of noise in at least in the US, there's lots of noise about diversity, equity, inclusion. Is it going away? Some companies saying we're not doing this anymore. But all we're hearing is we have to pay attention to them. Not only is it the right thing to do, but it's also the good business thing to do, because without the innovation that we get from diverse teams that bring their best selves to work, that bring their skills and capabilities to work, we won't be able to compete in this new overall business marketplace. And if we're not paying attention to that, we can't attract and retain the right people and the right talent. So all of this, of course, has to be underscored by analytics. You can't really do any of this stuff, attracting the right people, understanding what skills people have, matching them to their company opportunities, giving them these insights, without analytics, without insights. So that's where talent intelligence comes in. So now I talked a lot about many, many different topics.
That was awesome. So two things, and I want to get Nico's opinion on this as well. So that's one thing that we talk a lot here at Eightfold, is about moving from a hierarchical way of doing work to a more fluid way of doing work. So you called that out. And diversity is our talent table topic for next month. So I wanted to throw those two things out there because you did a great job setting that up. We're going to talk about all of those things and more next month. So Nico, what are your thoughts about talent management and what's happening in the space, especially when it comes to employees?
I really echo the words of Kathy. So it's clear that the environment is much more dynamic, right? And you see, if you then go to a lot of HR departments in our processes, our ways of working, a lot of it is still based on a different world. So for instance, if you look at our systems, they are often transactional based, right? So they have a part of the picture, but not fully. Also, we lack a bit this dynamic view on work and the dynamic view on worker. There's much more change. People are changing more. So we definitely have to overhaul how we have organized our processes and our approaches towards talent, right? And then the magic, of course, of digital is that you start in a completely different space. So you start with data, you start with AI, and then you build more impactful experiences, right, where people really can adapt to. And that then sort of drives this more continuous process of gaining data and then feeding back to people in the organization insights and actions. And on the other hand, also defining work and worker on a more granular level, so you can follow up more in a more dynamic way, is absolutely key. It creates then more visibility for the worker, for the talent, and for the organization. And it's not the full solution, right? There was a very interesting study of Gallup presented, I think, published last week. 42% of the people that leave jobs could have stayed if they just would have had a conversation with their people manager. So I think whatever we do in the technology space, it's always in combination with, I would say, still the very powerful people-to-people connection. So in that sense, you have to play on both, in both spaces. People-to-people contact gets really important in this high-paced world. So we should absolutely, support this people manager to employee relationship and train those people managers to support their teams and to have those career conversations. But then we have to enable it in a much bigger scale with much more easier to access and consume digital solutions. And that's where, for instance, the Eightfold platform comes into play.
Well, I think that's such a great call out, right? Kathy, I loved what you said. I was taking notes as both of you were talking, right? The employee activation, I love that, where we're talking about the balance of power is shifted and talking about analytics. And Nico, what you're talking about as well is how do we find that common ground? What does that look like to understand what employees want, how managers can enable and empower? And so that's that shift of businesses. Instead of being a rigid organizational structure, we have to now focus on what our talent is looking for. So instead of a jobs focus to a talent focus, which feels like that common denominator is that skills-based approach, right? What do people bring to the table? Nico, you said that in that study, right, that folks are leaving because they didn't know about opportunities to stay. So let's talk about that. How is the skills-based approach foundational, first of all, and also looking at changing that relationship because there's a different foundation? What do you think about that, Nico?
I think we should, in my view, we should have a very realistic view on it. So there used to be, certainly 2-3 years ago, everyone was saying, skill-based. I spoke with some other people in the market recently. They called out like skill-centric. So it is for me clear that for the next decade or more, we will still have jobs, right? Because the alternative is very difficult to imagine in companies. Just imagine that for a moment, that you would have no jobs in companies, only skill-based, really. I mean, most companies would just implode on that change. They would be completely deviating from the focus on their customers and driving their business. So it's an end world. What we do need to do is create more clarity on what is necessary in the work now and in the future. So you have to go granular on a more skill basis. And then also toward the individual, you have to have a better view and give the individual a better view on his or her own skills, ambitions, and opportunities. And that's, I think, the opportunity we have to create this visibility on both sides. And then, you will get a much more efficient demand-supply matching. And let's face it, at the moment in most companies, it just feels it's not really working, right? You're joining a company and after half a year, your job description, if you have one, you can probably already throw it out of the window because it doesn't reflect anymore the reality of your work. So we still need jobs, but we need a much more dynamic way of defining the work and the worker. And then skill is that language. And then you need platforms, and you need, let's say, a data approach to enable that across the organization and really having people adopting to it, right? The risk is, sorry for my long answer, but the risk is that as HR, we're getting where we were with the competency models. You remember that in the past? We had competency frameworks. Right. A lot of us just confused the business. It was not. A lot of people, it was very sophisticated, but it was not something that activated people for action. So whatever we do now with skills, and that's also our approach, activate people, make clear for people what is in it for them, because that is a gigantic power you can drive in your organization. But don't make it too sophisticated, but people get into that later probably. Does it answer your question a bit, Rebecca?
Yeah, that was amazing.
Oh,
and so, Kathy, I wanted to understand when we do all those things, what does that do to our culture, right? That was part of what we had, I think, with the competency models was driving that culture. It was culture-based. What does this shift do to a culture of an organization, and how do we make sure that that gets embedded as well?
Yeah, I think it's a huge shift, honestly, and I want to first echo what Nico talked about, because many organizations have jumped on this skills wagon where they're saying, well, we need to first inventorize all of the skills that we have. And we just talked with a large talent communications company, and they said, yeah, we've done it. We've taken 3 years. We've inventorized all 30,000 skills that we have in the organization. And I said, great, what have you done with them? And they said, we haven't gotten there yet. We haven't done anything with it. Well, that's not what you want to do. I think what organizations need to do, of course, the ones that they started with 3 years ago are already stale because skills are changing so fast. And who has those skills is changing so fast too, because people learn something every day. And if you don't apply the skills, they kind of get stale, and they get but if you use them on a project, then it gets amplified. So I think it's a big culture shift to think about from this rigid kind of job model where you said you're in this job, and all we know about you is what you do in this job. And we have many examples where people, for example, have talents or skills or experiences that they're not using in their current job, or not using the way that in their current job that they could use in another area. A marketing person, for example, in a tech company, was able to go into a data science role because they have certain skills that they might not have applied in the same way in the marketing role. Well, what does it mean from a culture perspective? Are we going to reward the person with double the salary because marketing is less compensated maybe than data science in tech company? So from a culture perspective, it really asks the question who you are, how you're rewarding people, how you're managing people. Are you like removing that cap on pay, for example, for people moving around in the organization in a skill-based way? It's a huge question, of course, because that has real implication for your financial kind of for your P&L and everything. But the best companies do, right? When we talked, for example, with a very large tech company, they said we have completely removed the cap on when people move around in the organization when they get a different job. There's no cap. So if they move from marketing to data science and the market would pay twice the salary, we'd pay twice the salary too. And it's not just 10% or 15% that they can get an increase. So it really touches not just the talent area, the careers area, but pay and culture, quite frankly, and how leaders think about the talent they have in the organization, not just like bucketing them into like you're doing this job now and that's where you're going to stay. Healthcare organizations, for example, they're moving people from receptionist area into nurse jobs. Huge difference, right? And needs lots of education and lots of training and lots of different things. But very different job, but not just bucketing people into who they were when you hired them, not just thinking of them on who they know, right? That's another big kind of maybe also DEI area too. If you don't have those connections, when you're the marketing person, you don't have the connections to the tech area, you probably won't get there without support from kind of skills platforms or something like that. So it's really democratizing access to careers, to pay, to development, all of those kind of getting into the hands of the employees, not just held by the manager or by HR.
Right. I love that thought about what does that do for compensation? What does that do for career paths, right? It opens up so many more opportunities when you take away that cap on pay or you take away an org chart from where you can move. So let's jump into that, talking about, and you mentioned that as well, about using technology now, right? And so understanding analytics and knowing where people are at. What should we be thinking about when it comes to technology and how that impacts the people team, right? HR is very focused on those relationships. And so I think it's probably a little scary for folks to say, hey, we're going to bring in this technology. Is that, and of course, this is the question I think on a lot of people's minds, which we've already said is not going to really, happen. Is technology going to take our jobs? And the answer is no, but how and why? So Nico, how have you thought about adding technology into your organization that still feels like you are empowering people and activating them?
Yeah, first of all, we are very clear on what is the business issue that we're trying to resolve, right? And we really fall in love with the problem and not the solution. To be honest, the solution can be anything, right? So, And what are some of the challenges we have? We already discussed so this higher pace of change. So we need deeper data to support a more efficient matching of worker with worker. That's one. Another one is that at least in our company, we saw a lower score on the engagement question around opportunity for growth. So there is a much more higher demand coming from the workers on, I want to grow, I want to develop myself. And it's sometimes very difficult for people to find that out in companies, right? So, and then you find out that in a lot of companies, it's still who you know, right? So we have invested millions in HR systems, but then really the conversations in terms of talent conversations, succession plan conversations, there is actually surprisingly little data that is driving that. So we have a lot of transactional data in the HR system, but we don't really have a lot of data on what is your ambition, what are your skills, what are you good at, what is your aspiration? And as long as you make that clear to people, so if we are able to collect that data and we are able to use that data, and you have to be very transparent around that, then for stakeholders, including HR colleagues, they see the opportunity for themselves to become this more strategic partner and to work more with data. And they have the conversations with unions to understand that this is not just some sort of project of, some sort of big product project, but a project to actually empower people to take the development in their own hands. So you need to be very transparent, but you need to connect it to real business issues and also drive it to a real outcome. And then people will understand it, and then that then drives the change. Of course, it means stepping up certain skills, certain data skills, and having storytelling and using data more in story. But everything, most of it you can learn as a business partner. So to be honest, we have very little challenges in that space because it's clear for everyone what is the business challenges that we're trying to resolve. I'm not saying it's easy, but at least from an adaptation perspective, it's going really well in our company.
Yeah, so thinking about the change management process, thinking about the clarity, making sure that everybody's on the same page. And I loved what you said about falling in love with the problem, not the solution, because that's where you're going to find, I love that, where you're going to find more opportunities.
We never talk about the tech, Rebecca. We never talk about AI. Why should we? I'm not interested in AI. I'm only interested in the outcomes. So that we know about the AI in the back, that's something, we're honest that it's there, but I'm not gonna, we're not gonna put it in the forefront. It's not interesting in a way, and it just puts people off. And and we just say, and sorry to one element in this change management, we also visualized it for people in a way that people, because sometimes for people it's difficult. How does it look? And we say just compare it with an internal LinkedIn. Everyone knows LinkedIn. Everyone goes there. Everyone shares tons of data. LinkedIn knows everything about you, your network, when are you, where are you applying for, etc. Oh, it's something like LinkedIn. Yeah, it's like LinkedIn, but we're not going to do it internally. So we're gonna support you and give you that opportunity. And that just then, see people just making the switch. Oh, that makes sense. Yeah, okay. So I think it's not super difficult change management. Business problem, and then visualize it in a way that people can relate to it. Let's say that makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, and I think what you're doing is you're putting the whole person in the center, right? You're allowing folks to bring their whole self to work, where they can put their passions, their interests, the things that they've done. Maybe it's extracurricular activities, but that plays into their skill sets, allowing them to showcase who they are in a way that also allows them to grow.
Right, and we downplay a bit, that this is also official. I mean, why do people go to LinkedIn and then they just share their whole life on LinkedIn? So I think you have to approach it with a lightness, like, this is, if you don't know you, if you don't know your skills, if you don't know your spirit, we cannot give you the opportunity. So if you give us that, then we give you something back. And then you get this flying wheel, and it's, then it propels forward, and you create this data engine where then more and more you have the intelligence, you can give people back in the front the experience, and in the back you have deeper analysis. So, but you have to be clear about that, but don't make it too heavy. It's just a system. It's just going to help you.
Yeah.
No problem. I love that, because I think we used to have these talent profiles before, like early on, right, where we said everybody has to fill out your talent profile or else, right? And it was like this big HR project that everybody It was more like a compliance thing. And people said, why should I take the time? I don't want to do it. And you got lots of pushback. And I think if you're approaching it like Nico, you do, to say, well, if you want additional opportunities, you just have to like basically put your information in, because otherwise we can't help you on that. We can't match you, and we can show you the path to move from marketing to data science or wherever, right? If we don't know what you're interested in. And that way, I think employees really love it. That's kind of what we hear from every company that we talk with. It's not a big push. It's not, if you don't approach it from, oh, how many people have complied with filling it out? Well, if you're not putting it in, maybe you're not interested in a career. Well, that's, I think it's going to be probably not that great for you then as an employee, but it's not a compliance thing that thou shall fill it out by a certain time. Just telling people what's there, right? And that way, I think there's lots of demand actually for kind of the talent marketplace, internal talent marketplace, or those kind of opportunities for employees, because they say, oh, wow, this is for me. And it's going to tell me something that I don't know, where the organization actually needs me, where I can build my career, where I can find a mentor, where I can kind of move into a different direction that works for me. It's really much more about them, not for, oh, you got to do it because otherwise the company can't fulfill their mission. Employees really don't care so much about that, right? They care much more about their own career. But if you show them how valuable it is for them, then they're like, oh, this is for me. It's actually not that hard to use. Yeah. Actually, it's cool. And then they're going to use it more and more.
Yeah, because you're shifting from your. Go ahead. No, go ahead, Nico.
No, it's just to throw out the number, because numbers speak, right? So in our old HRS system, global HRS system, we had 13%, 1/3 of the talent profiles filled. And you don't want to know how much effort, and every time we ask them, fill it and fill it and fill it. Now in the new setup, where we have 81% coverage across the organization, including supply chain, which is amazing. We were just blown away by that, because it's actually too good. So we now have a problem that we have to continue to bring sort of, because we like a slow start, but just from the get-go it was like bam, because it does tap into a need of people to be visible, to connect. But you have to take out this heaviness, right? So no one asks you to go to LinkedIn. No one sends you a process like this, how you just do it because there's something in it for you. And I think that's you have to bring it back to what's in it for you and be transparent and honest about it. And then it just goes on like magic. It's really amazing. It's still very high usage every week, even in the vacation period.
Well, it spreads like wildfire, right? When you try to roll it out usually as a pilot, then people hear about it and say, when does it come to us? And that never happens with other HR systems, right? Usually it's like, oh my God, like how do we drive them? Or do we have to tell them they don't get paid if they don't do it? Like, how do we get them?
It's transactional. It's transactional driven. Right. It's the machine set telling you that you need to do something. And that's HR for the last 40 years in terms of systems.
That's right.
This is putting the power in the hands of the employee. It's empowering you. So it's very interesting how this will develop in the future. And I think it will develop into something we cannot even foresee, perhaps. Yeah.
And making it proactive instead of reactive, right? It's not a compliance thing, but it allows them to learn and to grow and to drive. So it puts the power, as you said, in their hand, but it makes it proactive, and learning becomes part of the culture as opposed to, oh, dang, I got to take this class, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, it's about you. And it's about, sort of being positively surprised about the opportunities the system is nudging to you. And that's, I think, the thing that all the social media platforms are doing to us all the time. So in that sense, that mechanism is very powerful.
From a user perspective, it's so much easier to use than like these old school talent profiles, right? It's not like, and I gotta click all these different boxes and check off all the different things and all of that. And it takes forever, but it's like, it's going to suggest things that it probably already knows about you. And so then it's going to be, it knows stuff about me that I didn't even think about. That's like a study that I think we did with Eightfold, that was done at Eightfold. For every 5 skills that you think about, there's another 7 that you didn't think about that you have, that the system can then say, I'm like, oh, I didn't, of course I'm using those skills, but I don't even know I have them, or I'm not thinking about them because they become so second nature. So that's kind of the fun self-discovery too, I think. Like, oh, wow, I didn't even know that I had this skill set.
But it's not about the technology at all, right? So, only, right? So this is very important, but this is just an enabler, because, like I said, you still have to also work on, this people manager, employee, relationship, having conversations. It's still as important, but at least you enable it, and you have a much more up-to-date source to go to, also as a people manager, to know what your team, what the skills in your team are, what are the gaps. You can have much better conversations with people because you have better data also as a people manager to your position. Right? Okay. I can talk for hours about it, Rebecca, so you have to cut me off.
Good stuff.
I wanted to actually feed something in, and also first here's share something that we've learned, and also hear, Nico, your perspective about it. And I saw a question about that too, which is the employees all love it. But managers sometimes are pushing back on that, and we've heard this a lot of times. We work with a very large, with a very large manufacturing company, and they said, well, all the employees wanted to do it, and the manager said, great, yes, everybody should share resources and move people around and do projects and all that. That's great, but not for me, because my people are too busy. My people are so important. They're working on the most important things. So everybody else should, of course, give me their resources, but I'm not going to send anybody because
talent
we're
hoarding.
doing is talent hoarding, exactly. So I think that's a culture shift too. Nico, what do you think about that?
No, it's there. So again, that's why, you have to drive the change, right? So you have to make clear to managers what is at stake, right? You have to tell them, hey, listen, the world is moving so fast that, we said to a certain moment to our leadership, LinkedIn knows more about their people than we do. Do you think that is a good thing? And people that was this Gallup study I just said, right? That I think half of the US workforce is considering to actively looking for another job. 42% who leaves it if just somebody would. So I think we should think differently about talent and around the careers of people. And in that sense, we should open up, and it should be as easy internally to move around as it is to move outside, because that's often very, very easy, right? So we're trying to take away the barriers, but we also know this is a journey, right? So you have to time over time show the value of it, but it has to be, let's agree on that, much easier to move around internally than to move to another job outside the company. But in some companies, there's still too many barriers for people to then internally move, because managers indeed they hoard, or people are seen as non-loyal. There's a fantastic research about it. I don't know, I have to look it up again, about some of those internal barriers. So yes, that cultural aspect has to be addressed, but also there you have to take it step by step and just consistently feed facts into the organization around why this is important, and show them what's in it for the managers. Because what that research also shows is that the best talent wants to work with those managers who develop talent, right? So there's also, I think, something in it for them to not be shown as the hoarder of talent, because people don't want to work for managers like that.
Well, absolutely. And I think from an organizational perspective, you're going to remove first the requirement to tell your manager, right, when you're interested in working in another. You're not going to tell the manager if you're applying outside of the company, right? Why would you have to ask approval of the manager when you're applying internally, right? That seems you make it harder to move around internally than find a job externally. And what message does it send to employees? They're like, okay, well, if my manager doesn't approve that, then I'm just going to go elsewhere, right? I'm going to just go to one of the competitors and take my skills there. So I think that's, from an organization perspective, back to your question, what it means for culture, lots of culture change, lots of different things.
Exactly. You've tied it together just the way I was thinking. And so to forward the conversation around that, Kathy, you talked about organizations that take a full 3 years to create a skills taxonomy, and then by the time they get to the end, they have to do it all over again. It's a never-ending cycle. That's not helpful. So as we think about making this, and Nico, you've said this, it's got to be easy. It can't be super complicated. It has to be really clear about the strategy, what we're doing, why we're doing it. So so my question is twofold, and I'll throw it on either one of you. Feel free to jump in first. So the question is, what's the best way to start? And then the second part is there a right way to start, right? Like we think about it, it is defining your outcomes, assessing your current state, developing a strategy, but does it have to start there, right? Does it have to start with the skills ontology, or can it start someplace else to really make that shift? And I'll just throw that out there, and I'd love to hear what y'all think on that.
Well, I mean,
Kathy, do you want to go?
Yeah, I mean, I can get started, and I'd love to get your thoughts, and Nico too, of course. But I think you shouldn't start with the skills inventory. You should start with the business problem, right? Nico said it too. Like, start with what we're trying to accomplish, right? That's what we asked also this company that had the 30,000 skills. Why did you do this? And they're like, well, because everybody's doing it, or we hear that skill-based is the future. That's not a good reason, right? The managers won't care if you call it skills or competencies or capabilities. Managers really say, well, we have a problem of finding the right talent in this particular business area. So start in one business area where you have a problem. Don't try to do it for everybody. And I think that's so key, and how you got started, Nico, too, and how you very pragmatic about it. Like, be very pragmatic about it, not trying to say, well, we need to capture everybody's skills in the entire organization, because why? Do you have a problem in all the jobs, in all the locations? Probably not, right? So start with the most business critical talent group, business like job group or location, or wherever you have a problem, and start to kind of narrow down the problem. Don't say, well, we need all the skills. What are the critical skills? And then I think very pragmatically thinking about, how do we get the right skills in? And it can't be just a recruiting play, of course. It also has to do with retention, with reskilling, and with redesign. So that's kind of our 4R framework that we have that's really resonating when we talk about it, because lots of times when you say we have a skills shortage, oh, great, recruiting people are going to hire all these people. The recruiting people, of course, are pulling their hair out, and they're saying, well, the people don't exist, right? And where do we find them from? So looking at that, then you got to think about, well, if it's not just a recruiting play, of course, we need to continue hiring people. How do we retain the people that we already have, that maybe have like associated or like skills or adjacent skills? How do we reskill and develop the people that might want to go into the direction of where we have the skill shortages? And then how do we redesign kind of jobs or work opportunities or organizational structures to make it much more agile and much more kind of dynamic? So that's kind of the way that I'm thinking about it.
Yeah, I fully echo those words, right? So in the end of the day, it's about action, right? So the risk, if you make it really comprehensive and big, is that you make it very difficult to activate the stakeholders, the employees in the company, to start that action, which often means, upscaling, rescaling, taking opportunities to grow in the company. So how we approach it, we first of all defined critical capability academy. So we have an academy for leadership, the way we lead, an academy for commercial, the way we sell, for supply chain, the way we serve. And what we did is bottom up, top down. So what we did bottom up, we say to people, just declare all the skills you have in our platform. Like you've done in LinkedIn. You're fluent in Spanish, fantastic. Just just give us the skills. And top down, we said, okay, what are critical skills at the moment from a business perspective? And so what will make the boat go faster? And we focused specifically on our commercial skills because a lot of companies, certainly we continuously want to grow and grow more than our competitors and be better than our competitors. So we more or less defined a critical skill catalog of 100 skills, and we signed more or less plus 5 to employees to really focus them, because it's about action. It's not about the sophistication that we sometimes in the past had in HR. Look at our competency framework, all the organizers in the cabinet. Do you remember that one? And no one opened those cabinets. No one cared. But the business was like, what is this? I don't understand it. But so that's why we also don't, the lingo is skills. We keep it very simple. But then you drive action and you make to people, okay, this is the gap. This is where you have the opportunity. Hey, we have a great training course for you. Hey, there is a gig here. That's something that can really train you on this. Or hey, this is actually a new job. So for me, that is key. But of course, it depends on the context of the company. But deeply believe that this is the way to do it. Activate people and keep it something that people can oversee and manage, right? Can you oversee 30,000 skills as a HR professional? I would not. How does it look?
No.
Yeah, and then you have the discussion, what is the skill and what is the definition? And you have 3 people in HR and you have five opinions, and it just makes it too complex. You're deviating from what you have to do, and it's supporting the individual and business to grow and to drive higher performance. Make it simple.
I love that so much, that you're like basically saying it's only 100 skills and there are only about 5 skills that every employee can have, because you can't do more than that, right? I think that's where everybody fails, because sometimes people have 50 skills, and well, are you going to develop all 50 of them as an individual? Probably not. Are they all critical to what the company needs to do? Probably not, right? So like really focusing to drive action, I think that's so key. I just love that story, how pragmatic and how business oriented you are.
That's
Nico,
right.
So.
I love that actionable piece. And then where AI comes in is helping to do a lot of that work on the back end, right? I think, Nico, what you're saying is right. We're not calling it out in front of the company like, we're using AI, like, duh, right? So how do we take that behind the scenes, make it easier for employees to get the things out there, right, that are important, the skills that they have using AI to help? Kathy, you mentioned that, like pre-fill, right? Hey, we've seen your LinkedIn profile. We're going to go ahead and pre-fill those skills for you, and then you get to approve them, as opposed to feeling like it's overwhelming to create it from scratch. Like, I don't know, right? So using AI and using tech to make it easier is the underpinning, allowing folks to do more strategic work, right?
No,
absolutely.
Exactly,
I think also showing people the career paths that they could take, the connections they could make in the organization, right? How they can find somebody who could tell them about that job or tell them about that project. Like every time I think AI works well, it's people say, oh, wow, it's like magic. When it feels like magic, I think that's very cool. And then you don't have to tell them it's AI, basically. Like, wow, how did it know these things? I think that's what you want to have happen, right? It's like, oh, magically it showed me all these different paths that I could take and all these learning opportunities and all these connections. And it knows me exactly. And so I think that's the reaction you want to have.
And the AI is learning, right? So from a change perspective, we also always played it a bit down, and we said just the AI is learning, and sometimes you may see funny results. And then we always say, do you remember when you entered for the first time your profile on LinkedIn? Did you get the next day like perfect recommendations? Actually, still today, sometimes I get recommendations, and then you're talking a platform with 1 billion users and probably the most sophisticated algorithms in the world. So it's also not absolute. It's just a direction. It just helps you, point you to something. And it isn't always 100% accurate, but at least a lot better than in the past, where you didn't really know where to go in that big organization and how can I find those opportunities. But now it's coming to you. So I think from a change perspective, that's also important to lighten up again a bit and say, it's just a direction. And sometimes we had funny cases. Just to tell an anecdote, my boss, the chief people and culture officers, got a recommendation for a health and safety job in supply chain. And then I said to her, and I said to my boss, the AI is so sophisticated that it knows you really care about health and safety.
Well done.
So that's why it offered you. But just AI is just learning. So it those are hiccups that we'll get out of this. So you have to take it a bit light and don't make it like it's 100%. No, it's a direction.
I think you hit right on, Nico, because the AI is not making decisions for you, right? It's just giving you input.
Yeah.
It's not deciding on anything. It's not deciding on your career. It's not deciding on your pay. It's not deciding on what you take action on. And sometimes it's wrong, right? We see this all the time, right? And like, it's your judgment call. And if it says you have those skills, and I've gotten this too, and it says I have certain skills, I'm like, I've never done this. I don't know why it would think on LinkedIn, right? And I was like, why would it think I can do these things? I've never done this, like, I don't know, health science or something like that. I'm like, I wouldn't, of course, go there. But yeah, it just makes connections. And then you say, well, you give it a thumbs down or you just disregard it. And it's, as you say, Nico, it's not that heavy. It's not that, as my teenagers would say, it's not that deep. It's not that easy.
Well, and that's where you both have said this. This is where we talk about AI isn't taking over the world, right? And you think about those skills. If I say, and we all have this, right? I may think that I'm fabulous at something, and my manager's like, you're really not all that fabulous at that, but you have potential, right? Or I may not give myself enough credit for something that my manager may say, that is one of your core strengths. So that's where that communication comes in. Even though I may list all of my skills, that's that conversation with your manager where your manager says, let's talk about this, right? And whether it's this job needs you to be at X proficiency to say that you're excelling at everything, so let's get you there. Or saying, hey, let's make sure that maybe this isn't the right gig for you. Let's find the right place, right? That's that conversation. That's that human element that comes in. So it's not just someone checking a box and the employees just off running around doing their own things, right? I mean, it's that conversation and that development and that connection to help somebody get to that next level. It's that partnership.
Yeah. I totally agree. And I think I'd add that in an more agile world that we all live in, it's not just your manager, right? It could be your colleagues. It could be a project manager on a project that you work on. It could be a mentor that you're working with, because nowadays, like, your manager is not the only person that knows your work. Lots of times, like, other people know your work even better, right? And they know you better. So I think it's this all around feedback and like the broader connection, which I think makes it actually less biased and more impactful for employees too.
Smart. I love that. All right, so we're coming in. I'm watching the time. We've got time, I think, for 2 more questions. And so I'm going to throw this one out here. And Nico, why don't you go ahead and start with this one? So I heard this the other day from someone on my team. You can't incrementally work your way into transformation. So that might feel a little bit different than what we were just talking about, right? The bite-sized pieces. But with that in mind, as we think about transformation, whether it's all in, rip the Band-Aid off, or whether it's small bite-sized pieces that take some time to get into play, are there any tips that you would share around avoidable mistakes that you've seen or heard of that we can caution some leaders on to take into consideration as they're thinking about making a big change like transformation towards a skills-based approach using technology?
Yeah, so if I look at our approach, it's not that we don't have a very ambitious end state, very ambitious, but it's future back, right? So we have that end state clearly defined, which will be next level, agile, real-time workforce planning on an incredible scale, total workforce, including flex workers and what have you. But then we bring it back to today. What is the step we can take today, right? So in that sense, I think you have that future back vision. You have to create that vision and say, this is where we're heading, right, in a couple of years. And this is, we think, how the technology will develop, how we will develop in terms of our culture around it. So I wouldn't say it's incremental, but it's the journey towards this end state. But we don't think there's a lot of value in already fully publishing that outside of the leadership to all the employees that this is probably the end state we're heading, because obviously that is also dynamic and it will develop. But in that sense, for me, the incremental part is more that we're coming from a world which, let's face it, it hasn't fundamentally changed a lot of our processes since the last industrial revolution, right? A lot of our processes are transactional. A lot of our thinking is transactional, HR in companies. We have a hierarchy which is also often 150-year-old in terms of concept. So the change is gigantic. So you have to bring people on that path. But again, that end state is super agile, super focused on creating value for our customers. And then we bring it back to what can we do today and tomorrow, right? So I think that's the way to do it. You have to have that vision, but bring it back, You cannot change the world in a day. And I agree by the remark, by the way, you did about a transformation incremental. That will not happen, but we have that vision.
And I love what you said about that, Kathy. I want to hear your points too. The piece that I took away from that is big vision, small steps, right? Big vision with the leader, small steps with employees. You don't want to try to boil the ocean. You don't want to overwhelm, but making sure you've got that large plan that you're continuing to execute against. That's awesome.
Yeah,
Kathy, what are your thoughts?
That's exactly the way that I'm thinking about that too. I think you need to know where you're going, so you need to really have that vision on like where's the journey leading you. But then you start with one step, right? I mean, if you're, I said before, I'm a runner, I'm a marathon runner. I don't think about all 42 kilometers or 26 miles, right? I think about the next mile and then the next mile. Although I know it's going to be 26 miles, and I think that's the way you're going to break it down. And I think the other thing, and Nico, you said that too, is it has to start with the business. It can't be just an HR thing, right? If it's just like, oh, we want to do skill-based organization stuff because everybody else is doing this, and managers say, or leaders say, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't care about this. It has to start with the business. It has to start with the business problem. Like Nico, you said it. Are we beating the competition? Are we making more money? Are we better every day? Are we creating more value for the organization? Because in the end of the day, that's what an organization is about. So you can't lose sight of kind of the commercial impact and the business and the financial impact of doing this. So I think that's the other thing. It has to be business driven. It can't be HR driven. It has to be business driven and HR supported, not the other way around.
I think that's great. Okay, so one last question. I'm looking for your best piece of advice. Nico, tell me, what's one piece of advice you would give to HR leaders rolling out AI technology? Ooh, I put you on the
Well, just a quick introduction to the answer. So we know one thing for certain, right? I don't know the exact number for the HR technology market, probably Kathy knows, but for all technology in the world, we invest on annually probably $1.5 trillion every year. What we have seen in the last decade, hasn't created a lot more productivity. It's improved productivity, and there's some science now that AI. But actually, a lot of our investment haven't delivered on the expectations, and also a lot of people are not happier as a result of it. So all that enormous technology investment in HR that we're now in for decades, right? Let's go and haven't really brought us to a place where we are that more strategic as a result, or more productive as a function, or that we are happier, or that our stakeholders are happier. So long story short, we really need to do it differently. So we really need to start again with what is the business problem, really the business problem, and then move much more into a digital space, because those new digital solutions don't go over the transactional process axis. They start with big data, artificial intelligence, and employee experience. So they create much more flexibility to then deliver on the business and to create a solution for that business problem. So really understand the business problem. It sounds like a no-brainer, but I still see this around me that people choose technology and they deploy it, and then it's just not what they expected. Again,
Makes sense.
So really think about the business problem, because the technology that is coming now down the line can do it all. Don't worry, right? Okay.
All right.
I can talk for hours on technology.
I know. We need to have more sessions. Kathy, you've got 45 seconds as we bring this home.
I know. Well, I mean, we said it all, but I think the other piece of advice, it can't agree more than with Nico to say, well, we need to focus on the business problem. I think the other thing is focus. Don't get distracted. There's so many shiny new tools out there, so many shiny new things, so many things that you could be doing, but be really clear about, cut it down, don't get distracted, and keep at it. Because I see this all the time, people saying, well, we start this journey, but then we never quite saw it through, because in the beginning, we didn't quite get the traction we needed. We're pivoting somewhere else, we're going somewhere else. With AI, that's even more so, like shiny new object, this and this and this. There's so many things you could be doing, so find the answer to your business problem, focus on it, stick with it, and you'll get results. That's I think what I'd say.
I love that. Well, we absolutely could talk for more time, but I know we are out of hours right now. So thank you all for participating. Great insights that you've had. There's been a lot of questions and dialogue which we didn't get to. And so as a Talent Table team, we will look at those questions. We'll do a follow-up email and potentially answer some of those in our email. So thank you all. Looking forward to seeing our next Talent Table webinar on diversity. Kathy, thanks for setting that up so well. Nico and Kathy, you've been fabulous guests. We appreciate you. And the two little pieces of information that I took away there, right, is, well, three, it's not that deep. Activate and do step changes, right? Consumable changes. So 3 little takeaways. Appreciate you all, and we're out. Have a good week, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. That was
Thank
fun.
you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.